Welcome to Intention Now podcast, where we talk to successful business people, provide quality content and business mindset and the path on how to succeed. Today on the show, we have Joe Malone. Joe's an entrepreneur, MARSOC Marine. He's the CEO of GM Training, Southern Cross Safety Academy, and Lethal U. Joe, welcome to the show. Semper Fi, brother.
What's happening, Dave? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. It was great to have lunch with you and Lynn Louder, Recon Marine owner of Rosie's Home Cooking in Naperville a few weeks ago. Anyone in the Chicagoland area, I encourage you to stop by and visit Lynn. He's an awesome Marine, awesome food, so check him out. Just it's great to have you on the show today, and excited for our audience to get to know you and hear about what you're currently working on and how you're succeeding. So just wanted to start off with the Marine Corps. How many years did you serve in the Corps?
I ended up doing 13.
13 years. Wow, that's awesome. Okay. What was the most valuable lesson that you learned in the Marine Corps?
I would say there's a couple that I keep on the same tier of
Okay.
importance, but one that just comes to my head really quickly is learn how to carry heavy things for long distances. That could be one of the most useful skills that a human being ever develops in their entire life.
Can you elaborate a little on that? Why?
Well, the lesson came to me when I was on a ruck march with a Mark 19. A very heavy piece of equipment, very awkwardly shaped piece of metal. There's no comfortable way to carry the Mark 19. For anybody who doesn't know, it's an automatic grenade launcher. Weighs about, if I remember correctly, I don't know, it was 50, maybe 50 some pounds. And I just remember thinking to myself how painful it was when I was carrying this thing and how I could not find a way to carry it comfortably. And that if I could just figure that out, I would be in a much better position. And to carry a automatic grenade launcher that can shoot up to 325 grenades per minute if you got them chain linked the correct way is pretty friggin' badass. And that could be one of the best things that you ever have in your entire life whenever you're in a combat situation. And so that really just translated over into, casualty, care and carrying casualties and helping somebody. And then even nowadays, I liken it to even like carrying my son. I got two kids, and people underestimate how difficult it is to carry something like a child for several miles. I think of so many of these people in war zones and the way that they're cradling their babies, their kids, their toddlers after they're wounded or killed. And if your child needs help, how fast can you really get them somewhere? And I think that, that's just one of the single greatest attributes that a human being can have, is the ability to carry heavy things for extremely long distances.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps with your making sure that you could accomplish something as well, right? I
Yeah.
remember, where did you go? Did you go to boot camp in San Diego or Parris Island?
San Diego.
San Diego. So I remember just going up, uh, uh, the mountains there when we were in boot camp, right? A lot of people just didn't even have the mindset carrying the 70-pound backpack in our back, and a lot of people just gave up. So I totally agree with you. It's like, you know what, just keep going, keep moving forward, and you'll get up to the mountain, which is pretty cool. Uh,
Yeah.
what was the biggest struggle that you had in the Marine Corps?
Um, Possibly fitting in.
Okay.
The Marine Corps, it's even in MARSOC, man. If you don't really march to the beat of the drum for whatever team or whatever unit you happen to be with, it's almost like there's blood in the water and people will try to ostracize you. And so you really truly have to be comfortable owning yourself and who you are, and comfort and confident within yourself. And not that you're trying to do anything different, but just the fact that, hey, I am who I am, and people need to accept that. And I'm here to do work. One of the best compliments I ever got was that I was always optimistic and doing my best. And no matter what the mission was, I was just very much there. And so just being yourself, I think, is a difficult thing to maintain throughout the military, especially the Marine Corps, where it's so indoctrinating. And the other thing I would say that really was the guilt. There was a lot of guilt associated with hindsight and looking back at things. Of course, why you don't die and other people die, and they've got families and all that stuff. And so the guilt was a really difficult thing for me to get over for quite a while. And I don't even know if I would say I'm over it in the sense of like I don't think about it anymore. I mean, I think about this stuff every single day, but it definitely doesn't have the same tether on my emotions as it used to. I'm capable of seeing it much more objectively. And I think in part of that is because what I try to do with my life every single day now.
That's awesome. And that actually leads into the next question perfectly, Joe. I wanted to talk about why having the right mindset is so important daily, right? You know, I talked about that when we were eating lunch a couple weeks ago. And if you could tell me why do you think having the right mindset is so important?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why the right mindset can be so important, but I'm just going to dumb it down because I need it to be
Yep.
simplified. I'm a simple guy. So when I learned that your emotions are neurochemicals floating through your bloodstream, it's a neurochemical disposition in your body, and that neurochemical disposition is directly correlated with the thoughts that you have, and the thoughts are directly correlated with the emotions, and then they both feed each other back and forth into your actions, and then those actions become the result of your physical life and the things around you. So when I learned that information travels to the emotional center first, and then it stimulates thought, and that thought then therefore creates action. However, we have the ability as human beings to intervene against that process. So once we experience something, it's always going to go to the emotional center of the brain first. Then the thought begins to develop based off that emotion, that neurochemical disposition. Well, as humans, we have the ability to consciously intervene against that emotional process. It takes a second. That's why when you hear people talk about anger management or not losing your cool, breathe, count to 10, give it a moment. What we're doing is we're allowing the information to transfer over from the emotional part of our brain to the outer regions of our brain, which is the neocortex, where we think logically. It's what creates our consciousness, and it's what creates Dave. It's what creates Joe in essence. And we have the ability to say, I'm not going to let this affect me like that. You know, Viktor Frankl, concentration camp survivor. I think you and I talked about him at lunch, didn't we?
I think so, yes.
You know, he very famously said that between stimulus and response is where power lies. And this is coming from a guy who watched his whole family and all of his friends get wiped out in concentration camps, and he never talked bad about German Nazis. I'm almost positive you actually told me that, if I'm not mistaken, because that was like a new revelation for me. He never talked bad about them. And the point is that your mindset, the way that you view your life, can really be whatever you want. That's why humans are so adaptable. And so even in the midst of everything falling apart, even in the midst of, you know, your relationships, your health, or, you know, your finances, all which I've suffered very gravely from in my time transitioning out of the Marine Corps until now. I mean, as bad as it gets to any human being. You know, I've done the worst shit to people that I've dated, I've cheated, I've lied, in really just horrible circumstances. I've lost all my money on multiple occasions doing high risk behaviors and trading. I mean, you know, I tried blowing my brains out on multiple occasions, just never actually pulled the trigger. So my point is that you can go from that to a life of true beauty and abundance and real true positivity by understanding that you can consciously intervene against that emotional process, therefore changing your emotions, which then therefore changes your actions. And those actions, once again, will result in the quality of life that you have.
That's awesome, Joe. And obviously, it's all great information, right? And what actually triggered that change for you, though, right? What actually, it's like, okay, because you're at one point going, thinking of all the wrong things. It's like, what made that switch for you where you're at now, basically? So now a lot of people are still stuck in that, still thinking the wrong way. It's like, what, how can I change my life to be better, basically?
You have to get sick. So the Greek root word for emotion is emotus. It means energy in motion. And at the most fundamental level of all things, it's made up of energy. You, me, the table, the computers, the desks, the chairs, the microphones, everything is made up of energy, and it's just vibrating at a certain rate of vibration. And so when you get emotional about something, it's energy in motion.
Right.
You get emotional and it causes you to take drastic action. That's why we usually don't make major life changes until we hit these sorts of pivotal moments or these crises, is because we're emotionally driven, because we're so overwhelmed with emotion. And for me, I was so sick of just feeling the way that I felt. every single day, just miserable and hating everybody and cynical and hating myself and just wanting to literally die. I mean, I was popping handfuls of prescription meds and slugging it down with a whole fifth of Jameson, and I'm waking up on train tracks, literally laying across train tracks. My motorcycle crashed just all over. Like, the only thing that reason I didn't die was because a train hadn't come for the last several hours. And so when you're emotionally driven to make some sort of change in your life, that's where it begins, and that's where you can take the first step. And you can't just try to do it all at once. You have to build momentum. You have to do it and build upon it and just get yourself moving in a certain direction. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. And, for me, I had to ask myself, why do I feel this way? When do I get erratic? And it was at nighttime when I'm drinking, plain and simple. And so I started to completely avoid that at all costs whatsoever. And I did that by taking sleeping pills at like 6 p.m. And then I'd wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., which I still do to this day. And I don't take the sleeping meds anymore, but I used it as a crutch for that time, and I don't regret it at all. I'm glad that I did, because nothing else would have caused me to go to sleep. I would have stayed awake and got drunk and probably ended up killing myself eventually. But anyways, to answer your question, it was the overwhelming desire to not be who I was anymore. And I had two choices. I could kill myself, or I could try to actually man up and do something about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it takes different steps, right? Changing the frequency, like you mentioned, surrounding yourself around the right people, getting rid of the alcohol, getting rid of the drugs that a lot of people wind up going to, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, how many times do you see people get in trouble in bar fights or whatever, and it's
Yeah.
their mind's not in the right space, right? I just heard somebody talking the other day. I was out for dinner, and I heard a couple girls talking. It's like, how come so and so doesn't drink? Like it was something negative. It's nothing negative. I mean, this is a temple that we have, right? It's that we want to keep it as clean as possible and make it as strong as possible. This way we can live our best life and give others the best life as well, right? So, uh,
Yeah.
so that's awesome, Joe. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
man.
all right, so, and that pretty much you actually and you're like right on track on my notes here. That was pretty much for mental health awareness. I appreciate it. So, Joe, tell us what you're doing right now. You're in the Chicagoland area. You have different businesses. Do you focus on all three? Is there one that you focus on the most, or just give us an overview if you can?
Yeah. So a part of turning my life around was having to figure out what my purpose was. And for any veterans listening, this is the number one reason people kill themselves, not just vets, but people kill themselves, and why it specifically plagues the veteran community so much more viciously than the rest of society when we talk about, like, numbers or statistics, or at least I think it does. But is you need to have a purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, then you're screwed. And we always hear people say you have to have a plan when you're getting out. Have a plan, have a plan. And then they send you this stupid TAPS and TAMS class. It's like 3 days of resume writing, which is super overkill. And then they blast you in the face with like 14,000 different resources. And you don't know how any of them work. You don't know how to navigate the system whatsoever. But Congress gets to put that check in the box saying they gave you the resources needed to transition out. And so when you get out and you don't have a plan, you're screwed. I knew that because I actually had some broken time in service. I got out after my first 4 years. For about a year, year and a half. I was going to paramedic school. And then MARSOC really opened up to the rest of the Marine Corps. And I was like, maybe I'll go try out for that. And then ended up getting selected. So I knew what the process was going to entail to some degree or another. And I understood the importance of having that purpose. And so I wanted to help schools with active shooter response. I wanted to help law enforcement with active shooter response. Nicholas Cruz had just shot up Marjorie Stoneman down in Florida in early 2018. I was set to get out in 19. And what really struck me about that incident was that 14 out of the 17 people killed were sitting in the classroom hiding on the first floor. Why? Why would you sit
Right,
in a classroom on the first floor
right,
when there's a madman shooting people in the building?
right. Easy access. Yeah,
It's crazy. And
right.
then I started doing more research, and man, Dave, like 90 some percent of all kids killed in school shootings are on the first floor. And
Wow.
most of those 90% are sitting in the classroom.
Right, because that's what they're trained. Just lock the door and sit there. Right. Yeah.
What the like?
Right. Right. Makes no sense. Right.
So that to me, especially as like a special operations dude, where we live in these, active shooter environments, we're constantly planning for the insider threat and active shooter response. And then I'm looking at police response and I'm like, man, I could really help these people out a lot. So I thought I was going to get out and be the world's greatest school active shooter consultant. None of them. I've talked to over 100 schools.
Nobody wants
None
to
of
do
them
it.
have wanted to work with me.
Yeah.
I did work for a short period of time with a school in Chicago. Worst client I've ever had in my life. They followed me every step of the way. As soon as I left, they got shot up. They got shot up 2 days before I got there.
Oh my
And then
God.
I was there for about a year. And then 2 weeks after I left, they got shot up again. Not a single incident, though, in the time that I was there. We had the greatest. We had firefighters, paramedics, off duty police officers, veterans, members of the local community were a part of what we called the safety team, which was really the security team, but like the
Right.
safety team. So it just like was this perfect non-oppressive because I got kicked out of 3 high schools, man. I went to like a juvie rehabilitation. It's like I went to juvie for school hours and then like got to go home at night.
Oh
So it
wow.
wasn't I was locked up juvie, but you did get locked up when you were there. They freaking would lock you in a closet and shit, man. It was crazy. But anyways, so that was like my goal. And that's where Southern Cross came from. Nobody wanted to work with me. And it really, for any veterans listening, I really started a company because I got hit with taxes as a sole proprietor. And that was like 60% of my income that year I had to pay in taxes. I couldn't believe it. I thought that there was some sort of an accounting error, and it wasn't. It was an astronomical portion of my money I owed to the government, and it was 1099. So I didn't have it like I thought I was going to pay like 25% taxes. No, it was like double.
Wow.
So I started Southern Cross to have an entity for future growth as well, and to also be able to provide that service. When people didn't want it, I started to kind of pick up odd jobs, overseas contracting, worked for a company developing some intel programs, had some close calls, kind of got sick of that. And then I came back to the States, was doing a lot of concealed carry training. 2020, of course, the year everything went nuts. And so, like, a lot of people don't know how to defend themselves. Like, when cops
Right.
aren't coming anymore, what do you do? Like, nobody has a clue what to do.
You
And
saw so many people get armed, right? During 2020, right?
I wish I would have been selling guns back then, dude,
It's like
because that was like
there was
right.
lines. There was lines at
Yes.
the gun shops. It's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like people finally woke up. It's like, you know what? I got to save myself. But go ahead.
No, man, you're
That held in
100%
my mind
correct.
so much. Yeah.
100% correct. And honestly, I'm kind of hoping that the Supreme Court overturns the rifle ban because it's going to be lines just like that again. And now I do sell guns. So,
Okay, there you
um,
go.
but yeah, so really started working more with individuals, realized a lot of veterans basically at this point I had turned my life around well enough to where I was like, man, I could probably share these experiences with some other vets, help them transition a little bit more smoothly, maybe give them some of my lessons learned so they don't make the same mistakes. And then I found like it just wasn't necessarily the best thing for me because a lot of the people I was trying to help just really didn't want help. They just wanted to whine. They wanted to get their VA check and pop pills and drink and then bitch and complain about everything.
Right.
And that's the exact opposite of what I say you need to do. And so that's when JM training really started to morph. So I still do some corporate workplace violence preparedness under Southern Cross. JM training is like the B2C, business to client or consumer firearms training aspect of it all. I call it family protection and personal protection.
Nice.
And so out of that came the Lethality University, and that's just the portal that we use to connect people. We provide interactive online training. It's unlike anything else out there. It's like scenario based, and you have to hit the right answer. And if you don't hit the right answer, it explains why that's wrong.
That's
And
awesome.
for example, the home defense series is the first curriculum that we came out with, and it's everything I do as a MARSOC Marine to keep my family safe, how I would respond to noises in the night or peeping toms, trying to like spy on my kids changing or something. All of this stuff I've worked with people in the private sector now who've had these problems, and I've helped them overcome them, and I've given them advice on how to deal with it if it ever happens again. And it's helped them overcome those traumas. But of course, I want to help us prevent those traumas from ever even happening because most people don't know how to defend. Did you see what happened in Aurora, Colorado yesterday?
Yes, I did. I did see that. Yep. They just
What? Uh, f- Dude,
walked right in. Yeah. That's crazy.
And so,
So speaking of that, one of the questions I was going to ask you, and I'm glad you brought that up. So just for example, in that scenario, what would you recommend? Obviously, that's home safety. Give us three tips that people could prepare to avoid something like that.
well, the first thing is have a weapon that you can use to defend your home, a firearm
So there was
specifically.
like four or five guys, right? Or is there five or six?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there was a handful of them, that's for sure, man. Handful of them. But it starts and by the way, what I'm about to tell you, I told Bradley on the Drop and Bounce podcast too. I don't know if you saw that, but
Yes, I
he
did.
tra he was asking me, he goes, well, what if there's 10 armed dudes? Like, what are you gonna do then? You
Right.
can't protect your home against that. And I said, I was like, yeah, absolutely you can. And I've witnessed it in real life. It's a pretty remarkable thing. So first step is to have a firearm or multiple firearms, really, and know how to use them effectively. For people where you can have shoulder fired weapon systems like rifles and such, a 9 millimeter shoulder fired weapon with hollow points is, in my opinion, the best home defense weapon. And if you've got the money for a night vision and like a PEC 15 or like a L3 laser or something, even better, because now you could just do it all in the dark, keep the lights off.
Right.
If not, you need to have a flashlight at least mounted on the front of that thing so you can always get positive identification of your target before you engage, fourth weapon safety rule. But a shoulder fired 9 millimeter rifle like an MP5 or a Sig Sauer MPX, for example, amazing home defense weapon, very accurate, very easy to use, hollow point 9 millimeter rounds. You're minimizing over penetration, but you still always need to, of course, be aware of your target and consider the foreground and background. Um, and so after that, I recommend shotguns for home defense. I love shotguns, especially with birdshot or a mix of birdshot and slug ammunition, depending upon where you live and who lives with you. And then lastly, I would recommend a handgun. Handguns are the most difficult out of all three weapon systems to shoot effectively. And so, anyways, know how to use those effectively, have them and know how to use them. And then understand what the fatal funnel concept is. Where are the choke points in your home? So, in the one video that I saw where they just busted in that door,
Right. Exactly.
the door's the fatal funnel, man. And if you know how to sit a couple of rooms deep and position yourself with good cover and or concealment, you will light up those group of criminals coming in your house all day long. And
So you would have opened the door, fallen back into the hallway or something, and be ready to go.
I
Right.
would have never opened the door. I would have never opened the door.
That was the next question I was going to ask you. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, screw that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look, even if I lived in that type of an apartment complex, I think they have like a little peephole or something, or I'm gonna say, who is it? And if it's just some
Right.
people yelling some random stuff at me, I'm gonna tell them to get lost. But for me though, it's very important, and I highly recommend everybody have a home security system.
Yes.
Only like 30% of people have security systems, and then only like 10% of those 30 actually arm them and have them well calibrated. And that's what I talk about in the home defense series of the 4Ds is deterrence, detection, delaying, and ultimately defending. And if you apply those four fundamentals, you get yourself into that back couple rooms deep, you see where they're trying to make entry into the fatal funnel. And no matter where they do make entry, there's also fatal funnels in your home. And this is why I tell people to understand that concept, because most bedrooms have a hallway leading out to them. If you have a second story floor, you have a staircase going
Right.
up.
Right.
Sometimes people will have multiples, but there's usually going to be some choke points in the house that you could utilize the fatal funnel concept. And you just sit back, man. And as long as you're positioning yourself properly and you're engaging justifiably whenever they enter that fatal funnel, dude, you're neutralizing threats left and right. And there's no way that they stand a chance against you. They could just spray and pray all day. Now, of course, there's ancillary considerations if you have other family members in the house and kids and all this other stuff. But just to hit the wave tops really quickly, have the firearms, know how to use them effectively, understand the fatal funnel concept.
Nice. So those are some of the SOPs that you would they would actually learn in your training, whether it's online or in person, correct?
Yeah. We do the training. I call it training education and then coverage. So we
Okay.
have the training as like the in-person piece if you're in the Chicagoland area, or if you're just traveling out here, or I'm starting now to travel to other locations where
Oh wow.
we've
Okay.
got good numbers of people. So that's also a thing.
How many people do you need for you to travel?
It's usually about 10.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, it really comes down to the cost. Like I need to make sure that it is profitable and my wife doesn't punch me in the face for not making money on a travel trip. She's got
Right,
two kids at
exactly.
home. I'm just going nuts. But But yeah, so and then the education piece is that online interactive platform, but then in there there's also a community. It's a networking group is what it's turning into.
Oh,
And you
wow.
could
Okay.
also you can get great deals. You can meet other people across the country, network with them. You know, if a guy does like suit tailoring and you need some suits tailored, now you've got that guy who you can connect with. You know, you're both two-way friendly, which is usually a really good thing. You know, for the most part, people will end up having that to kind of get along on. And yeah, so it's
And
pretty cool. And then
and you also get USAA certificate or not certification. What is it called? Membership, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw you had
And
an attorney on yesterday.
yeah, I sat down with Dave McDermott yesterday. He's the man. I do not want a different attorney on my side. He
Okay.
cares, man. He cares. And I don't know if you heard him say like 95% of cases settle. And that's because they're being recommended by the attorney to the client. Like, hey, you might as well just settle because to them it's just an easy check.
Right.
Um, Dave cares. He hasn't lost a self-defense case in 26 years. And the dude is awesome. So, anyways, I pay for your USCCA membership. You know, everything I do is on a recurring basis because of that membership, the legal coverage, the insurance that comes along with that Delta Defense. And so there is a recurring requirement every month, but you my minimum package is actually cheaper than what you would get if you went through the USCCA themselves.
Nice.
So I was able to really broker this amazing deal with them, and props to them for being open-minded to that. But if anybody ever wants coverage and you're like, oh, screw Joe, I don't even want his training. Well, at a minimum, you can come over here and get it cheaper than you'd get it from them anyways. So might as well just join the team, you know?
Yeah, I think something that really stuck out because I was able to listen to a little bit. I had another Zoom call going, but he said you go from victim to defendant like immediately,
Yeah.
which makes
Yeah.
no sense. It's like you're protecting your family, but that's the way the legal system works, unfortunately. So you definitely want to make sure you have that protection to be able to cover yourself. So in case
Yeah.
something happens, so that's
And
awesome.
it'll financially drain you too. I don't know if you heard the story of my brother-in-law's cousin when I was talking to him.
No, no, I missed that one.
My brother-in-law called me last year. His cousin, so on his side of the family, got in a shoving altercation at a gas station. He didn't even start it. They're truck drivers. He took the gas pump. Guy comes up, starts pushing him. Well, he's a bigger dude. In the shoving match, his shirt kind of gets pulled and his gun gets exposed. He didn't brandish it or nothing. Guy goes off running. He's going to shoot me. Cops show up. They arrest him, take his gun, throw him in jail. My brother-in-law calls me, says, hey, can you call Dave McDermott? My cousin's a USCCA member. I say, sure. Turns out he's not a USCCA member. He let it lapse some months ago.
Oh no.
And yeah, it was 65K or 45K in that case, just to put Dave on retainer, and then $600 an hour after that. And he ended up spending about 115 grand just so Dave could then go to the gas stations, get the security camera footage, see it wasn't his fault, see he didn't brandish the gun, see he did nothing illegal. He actually was the victim in this.
Wow.
But in the end, when it was all said and done and thrown out, he was like over six figures in the hole, man.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's a great story to make sure you're a member. So
good.
make sure you sign up for that. That's amazing. So Joe, how do people sign up for your services or training?
JoeMaloneTraining.com
Okay.
is the best place to go for it. You could also shoot me a message on Instagram, Joseph Malone Official. And that's really the spots, man. If you go on there, you'll see a thing for the Lethality University if you go on the JoeMaloneTraining.com. And then if you're on my Instagram and you shoot me a message, I mean, I'll talk to you, I'll give you a link or whatever it is you need.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Uh, perfect. And I think we talked a little bit about faith as well, right? How does that come into play for your success?
It helps a lot when you have so faith is a state of mind that can be instituted through autosuggestion. When I learned that from
Hmm.
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich,
Right.
and the
Right.
laws of success, I was like, man, I could tell myself something over and over again and have complete faith in it. Now, I actually tried to not believe in Jesus for a period of my life. I purposefully set out to not believe in him. I studied Buddhism when I lived in Japan and Hinduism and Taoism and all this other stuff. And I do have my gripes with things like the Catholic Church, Christianity in itself, the Bible. I've got my own little things here.
Right.
But, knowing and feeling that God is within me and through me and the ultimate creator, this infinite intelligence that tethers everything to one. gives me a lot of faith, especially in the hard times when I'm just like, man, I'm never going to get out of this BS that I'm dealing with or whatever it is. And then I realized that that's just the default negative belief system, not negative default mindset, negative emotions, negative vibration coming from me, negative neurochemical disposition in my body. And so feeling God's presence around me and within me and through me allows me to consciously intervene and have power against those emotions and those negative default thoughts because we all have negative default belief systems. It's
Right.
survival based.
Exactly. Right.
And that's what allows me to pull my bootstraps up even further, man, and just keep making some sort of progress every single day. Even if it's just minimal, it's always about making some sort of progress. And so God carries me through those tough moments.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think if you have something to point you in the right direction, right? And you mentioned, obviously, I think every entity, no matter what is, and you mentioned this in the Marine Corps, there's going to be good people and bad people, right? Surround yourself around the good ones.
Mhm.
Focus on the positive on everything that you're working on. But yeah, faith keeps me going every day as well. Uh, what can you give the audience some words of wisdom that it takes to succeed and how to succeed?
Giving up's not an option.
Yep.
I've had to tell myself that so many times because it's not. If you give up, you die. Your family dies. Everybody dies, especially for the men out there listening. Giving up is not an option. And you have two choices. You could either die by a slow asphyxiation and get a job that's comfortable and that doesn't, it keeps you in this perpetual state of struggle, which some people really only want that.
Right.
Okay, I'm not here to judge you, man. I'm not here to
Right.
judge you at all. But it will be a slow asphyxiation on your life and your dreams. Most men live lives of quiet desperation, and that's true. I see it every single day. The other option is that you die because no matter what you die and you die going swinging, man, and you have huge hits and huge losses. But if you don't ever view quitting as an option, you're going to accomplish it. I've never once witnessed somebody work hard against for something and do the right things and take action and just never stop and not become incredibly successful. So giving up is not an option. If you give up, you're gonna die. People you love are gonna die, and it's that simple.
Awesome. And that reminds me, we had the conversation with Lynn. He has that veteran business network that helps veterans start their own business because he says, you know what, every veteran should have their own business. And I totally
Yeah.
agree. Because I've actually been in situations where I worked in at a consulting company and they said, hey, Dave, you're working too hard. You're making us look bad. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, that's what I'm getting paid for, right? So,
Dude, and that brings up a really great point though, Dave, because when I started meeting millionaires and a couple of billionaires now, I'm talking like at first I met some millionaires. At first I'm driving around some of these Chicago suburbs and I'm like, look at all of these thousands of $1 million homes. Then I think of California and New York and all these places I've been. I'm like,
they're all
there,
over.
there's millions of multi-million dollar homes everywhere. I was like, who lives in these? What do they do? What makes them so special that I can't also have one of those?
Exactly.
And then I started meeting some of these people, and I'm like, dude, these are not. I put them on a pedestal for so long. These
They're not
millionaires,
rocket
like
scientists. Yeah,
most of them are kind of stupid. I'm like, bro, what you're saying makes no sense.
right.
Honestly, though, sometimes that works out really well for you, especially if you're being an entrepreneur, because you don't really question yourself too much. You just do, and of course, that's the most important thing is to take action. No decision is the wrong decision. But yeah, man, just keep taking the licks and realize that it doesn't take a lot of brains to get there. It just takes a little bit of bronze, and most people don't even work that hard anyways. And so you can definitely do it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I started this podcast to open people's minds, right? Because a lot of them are stuck within that circle or square, whatever you want to call it, and they never think outside that box. It's like, you know what? You guys could make it, right? Joel's making it. We've had a lot of other guests on here that are making it, and we want to help you guys succeed in whatever way we can. So that's basically the main goal of the podcast, which is awesome. We're
Yeah.
just about wrapped up, brother. My recording just gave me a warning. What would you like people listening today to know or remember about you or your business?
If you want to keep peace in yourself, in your family, and society, then you have to be capable of great violence. You have to, because only those capable of great lethality are capable of preserving great peace. And just because you can inflict swift and just violence in a very fast and deadly manner, it doesn't mean that you need to be a douchebag. It doesn't mean that you need to flaunt it. It just simply means that you have the ability to live truly free and explore your own mind and your own heart and have a more open mind and a more open heart and be more accepting of other people and other people's cultures because you're not threatened by them. And if you could keep that fight or fear-based response at bay due to the confidence that you have within yourself and your abilities, it makes you a much greater human. And that's what I want people to learn from the things that I teach them is by being lethal, you become a much more complete person capable of much greater love.
I love that, Joe. That's awesome, brother. I appreciate it. All right, we're pretty much wrapped up. Thank you for being on today, my friend. Look forward to seeing you again soon. See if I could get down to for one of your trainings as well. Hopefully
Come on down.
by the end of the year. And again, great to see you. God bless you and your family. And thanks for being on.
Likewise, brother. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, let me put this on pause.